Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Gnostic Media's UnSpun podcast, episode number 94. Today I'm excited to have Greg Quinones back. He was on RBN way back about 3 years ago. And I forgot to mute my browser after I told you to make sure you mute yours. And let's see, it was about 2 years ago, next week, that you were on the Gnostic Media podcast, and we did a title by the same name. And, it's a really important topic, abiogenic oil, peak oil, all of this stuff. We plan to field questions from the audience. You are by trade an oil man. Now that's going to, first of all, right off the bat, that's going to have everybody's hairs on their back sticking up and, just claws out ready to come after you. Mm-hmm. And, we've covered this topic in the past. I wanted to have you back on. I mentioned it last week to you. Needed to have you back on because the subject always comes up and I always hear about it. And every time I'm stuck behind one of these crappy Priuses on the freeway causing a traffic jam, driving 55 in the left lane and they can't understand slower traffic, keep right signs, I think about this issue. And, it's so important. Energy, oil, all of this. People don't realize that what oil is. They think they've been propagandized for well over a century that it's a fossil fuel. And it's abiogenic. And you and I, we were planning about 2 years ago to have a part 2 of our little series with a guy from Australia that had written a paper on abiogenic oil, proving again, from his points that the oil was in fact abiogenic and not a fossil fuel. And it's created in large part by the volcanic action of the Earth. Hold on, I'm just checking audio levels here before I have complaints from the audience. My mic is probably hot, and it is. That should normalize things for the audience there. For some reason, this program always resets my audio levels on its own, so I have to check them each time or they get jacked up and I sound like I'm screaming, It's like every time it resets it. So anyway, Greg, welcome back. Good to have you.
My pleasure, Jan. It's been a while. I'm glad to be back.
Yep, and you've quit eating wheat and taken up cycling. And, mostly quit eating wheat. You said about 90%, and it shows. You look much healthier and more fit. I'm sure you feel much healthier and more fit.
Oh, yeah. Well, riding a bicycle, 5, 10, sometimes as many as 30 miles in a day. And I just do it for fun.
Yeah. So you're going with the vegans and tofu eaters on that now, huh?
Well, not quite that extreme, but it's just nice to get back into like daily exercise and not have to. And it's helped a lot with pain. I have issues with my back. That was actually from running from years ago. The sports injuries, and they just started riding a bicycle for fun and just got into it more and more. And so it's been pretty good. I've probably, since we last talked, I'm down probably about 30 pounds from there. So all in all, over the last 4 years, I've lost about 85 pounds.
Wow. Well, good job and congratulations on that. All right. Well, where do we begin? We had a really deep show when you were on the Gnostic Media podcast. It was episode 200 and something. I put it down in the show notes for people. And by the way, thanks everyone who donated this past week and supported the show. Really can't do it without you. And today, Greg and I do plan to take questions from the audience about, this whole issue. Somebody just pointed out Hippie Crusher, good name, except he spelled it wrong. The whole planet is a hydrocarbon generator.
Yeah, that's about right. It's a hydrocarbon producing machine.
Yeah. So in our state, we have this governor, Jerry Moonbeam Brown. And he's a tofu, kale eating, socialist, communist, whatever. And he decided to track the hydrocarbons and the pollution being produced in California. The best way was to produce a massive rocket to shoot up into space, which will blow out tons and tons of hydrocarbons to get it up into space to study the hydrocarbons, which are mostly caused from his running his mouth.
Yeah, that's it's almost funny how these politicians are.
Well, we've had California has had the misfortune of having this guy as governor twice. And he's the most elected and most popular governor we've had. I have had the extreme misfortune of meeting him one day when I was up in Sacramento. And he was a complete SOB. I'll leave it at that, in my humble opinion. Caveat.
Well, I got to tell you, he wasn't up for any re-election in the not this year, right? He's not.
I don't know. He's what is he, like 4 terms or something like that? He was governor in the 60s or 70s and governor 70s. Now. Yeah, and it was like, when he got reelected, it was like, what, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and I couldn't even believe it. It was like waking up in the middle of a nightmare and it didn't end,
I'm surprised he didn't get run out of town on a rail after the whole fiasco with the dam up there last year, which, by the way, is still in process of collapsing.
Right.
Well, they don't talk about it in the media.
Sure.
Anymore.
Well, and then there was the fire, just last month, and of course the fire now has produced more hydrocarbons. Never mind. Forget.
All those burning PVC,
PVC
sidings,
and all the trees and everything that will get recycled back into nature where they came from, how it works. So last time you were on, we decided that cow farts were the plague of the planet. Is that right?
One of the plagues, yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's what the hippies think, But so anyway, I'm joking. I'm giving a hard time, but we do have a lot to cover. So, Greg, where should we dive in today? Let's get into it. What's your background? How did you get into this? Let's just give a little lead in and then dig into some of the meat.
Well, I'm a consultant in the oil industry. I work in production and process of oil, meaning through the pipelines.
You just cut out there for a second. Repeat that. I
said I'm a consultant in the industry.
Yeah, only one word, but go ahead.
Anyway, helping getting the oil out of the ground and getting it through pipelines, generally by addressing issues of paraffin wax, asphaltenes, and other contaminants, natural contaminants within the oil itself. The oil industry is in great distress right now. Most of the people that were in the business when I was in it really full time, I'm really had to scale back quite a bit because as a small boutique manufacturing company representative, we have suffered a lot. The industry, the price really for most people to be able to make it in the industry at today's inflation levels is over 65 a barrel, but it has been in the 50s, 40s and 50s now for the last 2 years, literally. So it's really hurt a lot of people, put a lot of people out of the business, which is very unfortunate. But it's because there's a glut. It's because it's produced so easily today. It's being produced, and a lot of that's coming from Russia. A lot of Russian oil is hitting the market. Russia is doing a lot of ultra deep. At least they were at the time. I'm not really current in the last 6 months on it, but they were doing a lot of ultra deep drilling. So yeah, they were. There's a lot of Russian the traders that I know that trade the commodity, that buy and sell the oil out of storage tanks. A lot of it's coming out of Russia today. So, it's anybody's guess where it's going. But
that's because all of the other oil wells in the world have dried up now, right?
Well, no, not really. I mean,
Well, you
I
know,
was like,
that was
all these people talk about, you see these people talk about peak oil and that oil wells stop producing oil production in anything. It's sort of like farming. If it doesn't rain, the yield is going to be a little bit lower on a corn crop, right? So there's certain conditions that take place naturally deep within the earth that causes these reservoirs to rise and fall. Sometimes they rise quickly, meaning they can rise in a few years. Sometimes they might take 1,000 years to rise to certain levels. But they're they're always it's amazing how they go and they'll tap a well, let's say that's been capped, and that well which would have been bone dry just 5 years ago, now has the ability to pump, maybe not a lot, but 5 or 10 barrels a day. Okay, and there are millions of these type of wells all over the United States and around the world. I mean, the earth is just replenishing them.
Well, you know, down in Orange County, you know, Huntington Beach area, up into Long Beach, et cetera, there are all of these oil wells, and in Brea, a lot of oil rigs that were capped in the 1940s, and they said all of that oil was dried up and used and gone. And then a couple of years ago, I believe they came out and said that all those reserves were full again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, what happened was dinosaurs died and then decomposed really fast and then turned back into oil.
Well, you know, now they're going to say it's not dinosaurs, it's people. So we're finding oil under all the graveyards.
Under the graveyards.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sure.
Under the sewage plants, right?
Exactly.
It's like, it's like the La Brea tar pits. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? You know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how did the dinosaurs get into the oil pits? You know, how did the it's like, there's a problem there. Wouldn't they have to, like, die and decompose for the pits to get... Never mind.
I'm still trying to figure out how the dinosaurs got on Saturn's moon Titus. Because they've done, NASA's sent satellites up there, taking images, and it's got oceans of oil. Well, there must have been a hell of a lot of dinosaurs.
So
on Titus.
did they launch dinosaurs there, or
I guess so. They must have. They could fly. So now they're not just
pterodactyls. It must have been
pterodactyl knots.
Yeah. Oh boy. We're being a lot less serious than the last show we did together.
It's true. Fly, pterodactyl. Yes, I'm going to Titan.
So, all right. So, Titan, they've found oil there, but no dinosaurs there. We're just, and you see this. What's that? Senco oil. They have the dinosaurs, their logo, this kind of stuff. I mean, it's just
Sinclair.
Sinclair, yeah. It's complete nonsense. It's complete misdirection and misinterpretation, because they need you to think that it's a rare resource. They don't want you to know that that methane doesn't come out of cows' butts. It pours out of the ocean's floor every day by the tons. And so does oil, and so does all of this other stuff. And it's part of the natural ecosphere of the planet.
Absolutely. Yeah, the shrimp wouldn't be so good in the Gulf of Mexico if there weren't so many damn oil leaks.
Now, since that big oil spill, what was it, about 7-8 years ago in the Gulf, what's the shrimp life like now? It wiped out a lot of stuff. Is it totally gone now, or did it come back?
It seems to be doing fine from what I hear. Better than ever.
Better than ever.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into some of the meat and potatoes, so to speak. Excuse the Deadly Nightshades reference, but anyway.
Okay.
All right, so what are the top confusing issues that people have with understanding abiogenic oil?
Well, I mean, the top obviously is that the word fossil that's been associated with it, decomposing biomatter, and to a degree there are the decomposition of biological elements within it. All right, but in our world there's everything has, biological elements in it. We're carbon-based creatures, so everything that's within us, everything that's within every form of life or object on this planet has some basis, is a carbon-based life form, or was, or came from a carbon system, which is the Earth itself. So,
but unless if you're a hippie, you have to track your carbon footprint. I mean, if you are a hippie, right? And so, so you would have to track like the volcanoes and the winds and the trees, because everything produces, is a carbon producing engine.
Mm-hmm.
So wouldn't kale produce hydrocarbons and tofu?
They could. Yes, give it enough time, all right. Yeah.
Anyway, all right.
Well,
enough joking around.
They would feed those type of things, with those type of systems would feed. It'd be more symbiotic. Kale, trees, everything. They're not going to feed the carbon, but in their burning process, which they all burn and decompose, they're going to emit gases. They're going to emit the carbon that they withhold within their systems, within their structures, their cellular structures, will break down into the Earth itself again, and we all become dust, right? And then it will be reformed, reconstituted into another life form.
So
plant,
it could be a hummingbird in its next.
Absolutely. It's too big to say, right?
It's getting and that's what I was just going for. Getting people to understand the natural cycle of life, and understanding that all life comes from death, essentially. One life form eats another life form, and it goes all the way back to these small microorganisms found in the oil, etc., and all the way forward through the whole chain. So there is a whole cycle to all of this. All life comes from consuming, some form of death. The plants, get nutrients, fertilizer, mostly from things that used to be living and have died.
That's correct.
Animals eat plants and animals. We eat plants and animals. So, all right. So, so how do we get to people with this issue? And before, you and I had talked about, like this push for the Toyota Prius and all of these hybridized cars, etc., solar panels and all of this actually creating far more environmental damage than the oil itself. So it's been a couple of years since you and I talked. What's the updated information and all in that time, and how can we express this to people to get it clear?
Well, people don't understand that the solar industry, the renewable energy industry, it's more or less a subsidy to the oil industry, because the BTUs required to produce a solar panel, a wind turbine, and for its production, mining, manufacturing, production, and installation of these units, you're going to burn more BTUs from oil than what those sources will ever create. And I'm not opposed to what they call green energy, solar energy, or wind energy. Those are perfectly fine. I have no problems with them.
Have you seen the desert from San Bernardino to Palm Springs by chance, or over the Tehachapi Mountains, and the destruction that all of those
solar farms are building there, right?
Yeah, the destruction on the hillsides and the desert through there, it's immense from all of these massive windmills.
Oh, and the wind farms too, yeah. Yeah, it's it really is. You could burn the energy, consume the energy through our system just with the oil, with the liquid energy, the oil, rather than trying to recreate the liquid energy, convert it into almost digitized energy, which is solar, in a way, because it's what they say is renewable really isn't renewable, because what people don't take into account is that in order for these technologies to exist, they're so dependent on the rare earths that are needed in order to make them work effectively and efficiently. And those rare earths only come from very few places in the world, mainly in China and Mongolia.
Somebody's asking if you can turn your volume up. I don't have control of that. Can you turn your mic volume up just a bit? You sound fine to me, and I've turned mine way down. Just
Love to see you do it down here, but
sorry about that.
no, that's okay. I'll figure it out here, but why don't you take it for a minute while I figure it out here on the audio options. There we go.
Well, it would be under volume level. But anyway, so yeah, going back to these solar panels and everything, all of this stuff has to be made out of petroleum and rare minerals that are mined from these big machines that run on petroleum to dig them up, which cause environmental damage and pollution and everything, and these big, ore mines, etc. Trying to get to this stuff. You could probably just turn your computer volume up. Like if you're on Windows, just go to your little the speaker down on the bottom right corner and go to recording devices and turn the volume up there.
Okay, is that working a little better?
You could probably turn it up a little more. Why don't you have to talk though, so I can tell if it's better or not.
Okay, are we a little better now, or?
Yeah, that sounds a little better. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry about that, folks. A little bit behind the times here, right?
Yep.
Okay, maybe you could repeat what you were saying?
I was just talking about the destruction from the ore mining and everything to get to these rare earth minerals, to build all of these solar panels. We discussed the batteries before and everything. Anyway, but why don't you just pick up where you were going before we got distracted there?
Yeah, in particular with the solar panels, I mean, there are, anybody could Google this, there are some of those polluted bodies of water are in China, in these areas, in these mining areas where they're mining the rare earth minerals, and in their processing to make it so that they can be, sold to industry. And the chemicals that are used in the extraction process, of extracting these minerals from the iron ore that they're locked into. And then this is just put out into just basic open waste pits. That's polluting the water supply. I mean, it's really pretty sad. We talk about clean energy. If people only really understood that solar is probably the furthest thing from clean, it's just not in your backyard. It's halfway around the world. But it is dirty. It's extremely dirty. Where oil, it's unsightly for a short period of time. Yes, it's polluting for a period of time, but so is anything. But it is a natural substance, which means that it will break down over time. And it actually, because it is a carbon, it will actually act as a fertilizer. So you could go to, let's say, like, what's the one in Alaska with the oil spill? The Exxon Valdez. Go to Valdez, Alaska. Terrible oil spill there. Well, you don't see really any signs of it. I mean, if you got down and put your hands in the mud, you probably could pull up oil, with your hands. But as far as life, it's teeming. It's in the state of full recovery. Some of these other, like these lakes and stuff in China and in Canada, where they do some mining for rare earths up there as well, and the pollution that's being created, some of these things are going to take, hundreds of years for there to be any recovery of life. It eventually will happen too, because we don't, as human beings, we don't create anything. I mean, as far as the elements are concerned, the table of elements, we've never taken a substance and created it. All we can do is combine things that already exist to come up with something new. But the great thing about nature is, nature will break those elements apart given enough time, and they'll go back to their original form. But for now, we're just seeing what we're seeing is an economy that has become so dependent upon the issuance of new credit, new debt, right? We're at the end of that cycle, that they just need something new to invest in. And so, yeah, the people in the oil industry, the big players in the oil industry, they're actually the ones who are probably doing the most promoting of solar and renewable energy right now. because at least they can hide the fact that, they're selling an awful lot of oil for the production of these things. So,
does anybody talk about do you get to see like photographs of the facilities and grounds around, say, solar panel production facilities, so that we can see, and the mining and all that goes on around that, so people can see the environmental damage? Because all they'll want to talk about is the damage that oil causes, when the oil is needed to dig up all of this stuff, when you could just use the oil directly.
Mm-hmm. There's, if you go onto YouTube, there's videos of the polluted lakes in China. You can just keyword, rare earth mine pollution. And, there have been people that have been trying to get the word out for years to all of the greenies and the hippies out there who talk about solar energy the way they do, to warn them, to let them know, like, no, this is not as clean as you think. It's quite dirty.
Yeah. Well, I'm showing some photographs on the screen of places just wiped out by this. And, so when you try, when you use all of this green rhetoric and you think, oil is the bane of the earth and all of this evil and everything, and you have to use solar, you have to drive a Toyota Prius and cause massive traffic jams on the freeway, which then consume more oil because you're creating a traffic jam by driving 50 miles an hour in the left lane and not letting people pass, etc. All of these things are, exacerbating the pollution issues. And, people are just so caught up in what they are told to believe by Governor Moonbeam and the cronies and the UN Agenda 21 or whatever they've renumbered it to now is, all of this stuff is, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's mind-boggling, really. It's because it's completely unnecessary. And again, I want to qualify this. I'm not opposed to solar energy. I mean, there are certain spots where it's very beneficial for people who want to live off grid.
Sure.
There are a lot of people now who they choose to, like, let's say they want to live mobile, they want to live in a motorhome, they want to live in a trailer, they want to be able to travel. Yeah, solar panels are great for that. I'm not opposed to that at all. But trying to use it as a power source to operate cities, businesses, that's just preposterous. It's ridiculous.
So I just wanted to point out, somebody in the chat pointed out that they doubt that dinosaurs ever existed, and that's another huge issue because it looks like the Huxley UNESCO group made that all up as well, and nobody's ever actually seen a real dinosaur skeleton. What they see are plaster and plastic casts made of, like, they'll take a fingernail or one little bone and they'll create one little fossil and they'll create this whole creature around it and then put it in a museum and tell people that this stuff was real,
Listen, of course they were real. I saw it in a Steven Spielberg movie.
That's right.
I mean,
Jurassic, whatever,
Yeah, Steven Spielberg wouldn't lie about that,
and then, it's like, it just gets, and Uncommon just donated $5 for mentioning that. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Others, please donate. We can't do the show without your donations and support. This is a listener-sponsored show. No commercials, no crud. We provide the shows for free on the website for months. So please do support. But, all right. So, yeah, how much in the last couple of years since you and I spoke, how much has this issue taken hold in society? Our last interview on my channel, it had about 9,000 views, but somebody downloaded it and re-uploaded it onto another channel, and it had like 90,000 views in a few weeks, which of course the CIA doesn't allow for my channel.
Right, but yeah, we had quite a few views, yeah.
Yeah, and somebody's bringing up that issue, but yeah, it's they want us to talk about the flat Earth psyop nonsense. They're always trying to bait us into that, and they'll, tell you you're not a real researcher if you don't discuss flat Earth, because
Well,
anyway.
They can tell me what it is or it isn't when they go up in a rocket ship. Okay, until then, it doesn't make any difference. Live your life. You have to survive.
I think it's a psyop personally, and I could care less really. And I don't believe in flat Earth because I live at 5,000 feet elevation on an 11,000 foot mountain. So,
But as far as your question goes, is what kind of progress has there been? Virtually none. If anything, the biggest welfare whore who ever walked the face of the planet, Elon Musk, with the whole Tesla thing, has created this whole public relations engine machine around, the green energy, with all the big companies getting in on it. Have innovations taken place? Yeah, I suppose. There's the batteries seem to last longer.
The batteries last longer, and they've also created a lot of artificial intelligence to control us with it. And and that's obviously what Elon Musk is really, pioneering, and using his, battery-powered circuit designed polluting vehicles that are called zero emissions. But that's because all of the emissions are back at the factory in the mine, not spewing out on the road when you drive it every day.
That's right. In somebody else's backyard until they say no. But
yeah, so what happens?
Recycle it, then put the pollution on us, and then we'll go back to manufacturing, and then in China they'll become fat, lazy, and
like us, right?
Like us, and they'll just replace one hand against the other.
So, how much longer do you think Tesla Motors has before this whole, let's call it a pipe dream, because that's what it is, before it implodes and before it gets exposed as the environmental
well, it's like Amazon, right? These are models of companies that don't pay dividends. These are companies that have enormous valuations, which allows them to borrow extremely large amounts of money at very, very low interest rates, right? 1%. And then they could turn around and they buy systems and which add value to the initial core, which keeps the whole thing going. That's at what point. I mean, it isn't so much Elon Musk, it's this business model of you're not creating anything. You're just shuffling the deck on the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. At some point it's going to blow up. And when that point blows up, it's going to be terrible for the people that are dependent upon the system. But for many, they're going to be ready to move. And that's why I think oil is going to, the innovators in the oil industry are just waiting. Because during the boom that we experienced since 2007 to 2014, before the collapse started to take place, the amount of innovation that was taking place behind the scenes, because when times are good and people see $100, $120 a barrel of oil, that brings out a lot of innovators, a lot of people with ideas, and the tinkers, the engineers. They'll start thinking of ways of more cost-effective, better ways of doing it that will yield better production at lower cost. Something that's less dependent on some of the harmful petrochemicals that were used in the oil industry, like in fracking. And that a lot of that technology was getting ready to come to market. And the recent collapse in the price of oil has really stymied all that, because that put a line in the sand for the innovators, for people like me, with the products that we were selling into the market. We can't compete against the large Halliburtons and Schlumbergers and Champions and companies like that. These are well funded. They could go to the the Federal Reserve and borrow $1 billion to keep themselves in business. Well, we can't do that. So
now, somebody in the chat group, and we're going to take questions before too long, but somebody in the chat group, Michael, says, and like this is a bragging point, China is the world's largest solar producer. Oil is shit.
Well, he's right. They don't have any oil in China. So, yeah, they are the largest solar producer because that's where all the rare earths are, and they manufacture the panels there. So, yeah, that is a true statement.
But what about, and then he follows up with oil is shit. I mean, it's just a blanket statement of, see, the statement is very ignorant because if you think about it, in the last century plus, oil has increased the human standard of living at all levels across the board in every nation at every economic level more than anything else ever in history.
You wouldn't be here without it. You wouldn't have food on your table. You wouldn't even have a table because our entire civilization today is completely and totally based upon oil. And you're not going to replace that because there is no better form of energy than liquid energy. Liquid energy is the easiest to transport. It is the easiest to buy and sell and trade as a commodity. I mean, think of it this way. We think of what is solar panel? What is solar electricity? What is wind power? It's electricity, right? If you're going to transport electricity from one place to another, do you know that 90% of the electricity that's transported through the wires is lost before it reaches its destination?
Because of resistance and contention in the wires and burning up, it would be heat is produced just in the wires as it's, I have a degree in electronics engineering.
So you understand, people don't get that
right.
It degrades down. It has to be boosted up. The cost, the maintenance. It's the most inefficient form of energy is electricity. But I could take 10,000 barrels of oil and I can put it in a pipeline in Houston, right? And the pumps will send that oil north. And that oil will wind up in Elizabeth, New Jersey. All 10,000 barrels, every drop. With no degrading, no lack of efficiency, or I could put it on a train.
Some might get left inside of the pipe,
It's a very, very small residue amount, but then they pig those lines and it keeps them clean. And no, it's pretty much it all goes through. People would be surprised. Like they might send oil through a pipeline one day, and the next day it might be vegetable oil that you're buying in the grocery store. So,
if people want to post questions up in the chat room there, we'll start fielding some of those pretty soon. Mm-hmm. All right. So if they started producing solar panels in the U.S., would that be a good thing? And that's another issue is you produce these panels in another country that we've propped up, by the way, economically. Thanks to Bill Clinton and the communists, we literally propped up that whole country so that we could have cheap slave labor and so that they could drain the industrial and economic infrastructure out of the U.S. and over there. So if we started producing these panels here in the U.S., that would be a good thing, right?
That would be good for manufacturing and jobs here. Not opposed.
Well, I'm talking about pollution-wise. I should have been clear.
Well, then they would still be polluted over there because they'd still have to mine the rare earths there. We don't have enough here to meet the demand. So China is actually the best place if you're going to go with solar panels. It is the best place for it.
So it's better to just leave our toxins there than bring them here, right?
No, if you're going to have solar panels, it's not good that we should find solutions to those problems. Okay, I'm for
right.
That,
I'm teasing about, obviously we don't want to poison. Sorry, Chinese, it was a joke. Somebody wants to know about natural gas, and we mentioned that earlier, but natural gas is another thing that the Earth produces tons of every day. There's lakes in Russia that are filled with natural gas.
Yeah, I listen. It's natural gas is part of. It's in every oil well, right? It's in the oil itself. When it's pulled up and sent off to the refinery in its distilling process, they pull off the natural gases out of the oil itself when it's in the large stills that you see when you drive by refineries. So it's a it's a cheap, plentiful source, and that used to be stuff they used to just let go in the air, and they burn it when you drove past the refineries. You saw them flaring it because they had so much of it. In fact, if you're, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but if you in parts of Louisiana and Texas, when you look out in the Gulf of Mexico at night, you don't see city lights out there. You don't see like the darkness of the ocean any longer. You see this shimmering light way out in the distance along the sea line, right? And those are all of the oil platforms that are flaring their natural gas off out there. It's lit
So
up
they
like it's
they have to release the natural gas. You're saying they have to just burn it.
yeah. They have no there's nothing else they can do with it. They don't have the storage capacity for it.
So there's so much of it they just burn
They
it
just
off.
burn it off. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
All right. So Citadin asks, wasn't it Rockefeller that coined the term fossil fuel?
It was. It was a convention in Geneva, and I think that was in 1890, where it was. They wanted to. They wanted oil to be scarce, um, which it is not. Oil is everywhere. Just how far are you willing to dig for it? But they wanted to. What they want to do is to create scarcity because you can't make profits in abundance, right? Prices fall in periods of abundance, but they will rise in periods of scarcity. So to convince the public or to convince their business, the people they would be selling their product to, their customers, to, justify the price, they had to create this whole fictitious storyline that oil was decayed dinosaur matter, fossil fuels, label it as such. This way they could turn around and say during periods of shortages, well, we're having a hard time finding it because we're running out. And they were predicting the end of oil way back in 1890. They were saying we were going to run out of oil by 1920. It just they just keep saying the same thing over and over again. It's like, what are you guys going to learn?
So somebody uncommon asks again. He says he once heard about a university student somewhere that invented solar technology that was 10 times better than regular solar. But we still have to make it out of petroleum. The panels are still made out of petroleum and these rare earth minerals.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So even if they increase the efficiency, you still have the same base issue. What you're doing is you're using energy to make these things to produce energy rather than just using the energy.
That's right. Now here's the dilemma too, like with solar. Let's say you do produce a solar panel commercially that is 10 times more efficient and effective than the current panels that are being produced today. Let's say it produces more than enough electricity for you that you consume in your own home to power your air conditioning, your heating, your stove, everything that you normally use. Hey, that's great. Now you don't have an electric bill. What are you going to do with the excess power? Well, you could store it in a battery, right? And keep it for a rainy day or when your power goes down because it's a fluctuating scale. It's never up, 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 up constantly. Or you could sell it back to the utility. Well, what happens when you're selling it back to the utility? It's going to go down a wire, down the street, to the next town over. And 90% of what you produced is just simply going to fade away and be degraded by the time it arrives at its destination. So, and what is that process of getting it from your house to a power station or to a transfer station? That's entirely dependent upon petro oil industry.
Well, I used to have a friend who ran the big power plant over in, I guess, what is that, Rancho Cucamonga or something like that over there. And so this was a big power plant that had gigantic jet engines in it run on gasoline to generate the electricity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds about right.
You
A lot
know,
of
so
fuel
you
oils,
know,
bunker
so
oils.
the oil is constantly being converted over. Now, Amid says oil is good for energy, but plastics, and of course, this is a segue because we're not talking about plastics, but plastics have been overused and the effects are becoming apparent. And I would agree with that. I mean, you know, you
Hmm.
have plastics floating in the oceans, you know, McDonald's, all these different groups using all these plastic things, plastic wrappers, etc. The hippies here in California, they have decided they're going to save all of our lives by making us pay for grocery store bags if you don't remember to bring yours from home. You know, so and never mind, everything in the store is wrapped that way now, but by eliminating that one factor, now we're going to, you know, save the planet and you know, and Governor Moonbeam.
Yeah, plastics are. It was they're there's just it's a byproduct of in the distilling process of oil, and they figured a way back years ago. They try to use every bit of oil that they can besides what's produced for energy. Um, and they used to just dump this stuff, and they decided, well, you can make really cool stuff out of it. And a lot of it has been very beneficial, but like anything, there are those who take it too far, such as putting overall food in plastics. Um, it's There's certain things that it shouldn't be in. So I'm all for bringing balance to
Somebody says
but
plastics are great. That's what margarine is.
well, it's true.
Good job,
It's a,
Drew.
it's a plasticide. You beat me
Yeah,
to
it
it. I was
is.
going to mention that.
Yeah. Well, you know,
Yeah.
but that's a plant-based plastic. Obviously
No,
they.
it's got petroleum in it.
Oh, does it? Now,
Oh yeah.
a lot of petroleum-based plastics could probably be made biodegradable, just like plant. You know, another, of course. Somebody just mentioned hemp oil plastics. I was the Inland Empire coordinator for the California Hemp Initiative way back in the day, and that was one of the things that we were constantly touting were hemp plastics. But what can we do with petroleum-based plastics as far as making them biodegrade and not hang around for 5, 10,000 years?
Well, one of the great things is that it's actually was invented in Japan. Was you can actually take the plastics and convert it into diesel fuel, and it's just a small device. Looks like a little box that you put on the counter. You take your plastic bottles and everything and throw it in there, and it sends radio beams, like radio signals through it. I forgot what frequency waves, but it breaks the molecular levels down. And what you're left basically with is diesel fuel. You could put it in any diesel engine, that you wish. You could turn it
Yeah.
into fuel.
Somebody just said no more margarine on their pancakes. It's like, you eat pancakes? That's made out of wheat. Are you kidding?
Why would you have margarine on anything? I mean,
why would you have margarine on anything? And furthermore, why would you eat pancakes, you know? All right, so depolymerization. But we do, there is obviously a plastic problem that's been created over the last century, and that does need to be taken care of. But that is not oil's fault.
no.
That's not that's not petroleum's fault. That's the cheap and amazing things that we can make out of it. It's somebody just mentioned polymer. They're polymer guns. Everybody who has a Glock, they're like, oh, my polymer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
the main problem is you're never going to train human beings to be clean, right? Everywhere on this planet you go, humans are that they litter and destroy their environment, regardless of what it is, whether it's plastics or anything else. I mean, it's we're just not that clean. We need to be heavily disciplined and punished in order just to keep our surroundings in decent order. Like they used to do, I guess, what they used to do in Singapore. Do you remember that story years back where the guy, the American that was over there, he was the big it was all over the news here. I guess it was probably about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And he spit on the sidewalk or spit chewing gum out on the sidewalk and was arrested for it. And he got sentenced to 10 lashes. And it got the whole U.S. Embassy and the government, the media, and everybody was involved in it. You know, they wound up keeping him there, locked up for 3 months for spitting chewing gum on the sidewalk.
Because he didn't want to be lashed, right?
Because he didn't want to be lashed. So finally he gave in and said, you know what? I just want to get out of here. Just give me my 10 lashes and I'll leave. And it would have been over in 5 minutes because they, you know, but that's how they handle it over there. They take it that seriously. You will not disrespect your surroundings or the people, the effort, the cost that went into creating this, you know, beautiful thing that we have, whether it's created by nature or created by man. And what do we have? You drive down the road, or if you give it a chance, anybody who cycles knows this. When you ride down the road on a bicycle and you look down into the drainage ditches, and whether, you know, like on bike paths and so forth, what do you see? You just see garbage. Garbage is everywhere. I mean, plastic bottles, cans. I mean, it's the world is one big giant waste dump for humans. You know, I wish there were, and when people complain about oil, which is just something natural that, you know, it's going to do whatever it's going to add to the carbon. What we do is 10 times worse just in our everyday lives. And I wish there was a way that you could fix that. And I'm sure the architects of our society probably sit around that conference table saying, you know, what a great world it would be if we could just get these people to stop throwing after they go through McDonald's, to keep them from stop rolling down their window, and out goes the trash.
Wait, people still eat at McDonald's? It's like pancakes, you know? It's like you eat that crap, it's plastic, you know?
You ever drive by a McDonald's and see? I'm always amazed.
I'm always amazed. Well, I'm amazed at the lines, and I'm amazed at the size of the people that are always there. You know, it's like, wow. You know, it's just it doesn't add up. I mean, clearly the people who eat that stuff are sick. You know. But you know, I got some clown in the chat box there arguing how gluten is good for you. Never mind that the entire sick industry is based on it, and it creates like 40 to 50 different diseases that manifest in every different direction. But this person who hasn't done any research on it is wasting everybody's time. So I thought I'd mention that. Well, that's why I'm looking at over there. All right. Anybody else have any questions in the chat group? You know, it's, you know, somebody asked, what is the next energy paradigm?
Ooh, that's really interesting. I would love it to be, you know, some sort of, you know, thermodynamic energy. But again, it relates back to the transportation of it. But if there's, with some of the stuff that's going on in China, some of the research in China and in Russia, because of the oil industry and the ultra deep drilling testing that they've done, they have been able to find ways of really harnessing a lot of thermal energy from the earth. And but I have to say this above all, and I know it's not going to happen in my lifetime or your lifetime or probably any of our listeners' lifetimes, but the best hope for, I think, that next turning with energy, and I say this all the time, is it has to be the micronuclear reactors, the same stuff that powers the submarines and the aircraft carriers. These are, and people don't like it because it's, you know, that's when you talk about oil, they really lose their mind when you talk about nuclear.
Well, yeah, because they think of Fukushima or you know, Chernobyl or something like that, or 3 Mile Island, and they don't think about they don't think about, what are they called? Small, what's the
modular reactors?
Yeah,
small SMRs. Small modular. Right, SMRs are the most efficient. They literally can run for, you know, 500 years. Right, the fuel source,
and one of them powers a community of about 20 to 30,000 people, right?
Exactly.
And then you could get rid of all of these atrocious power lines and towers that traverse the entire countryside.
Not only that, you can completely sanitize all of your sewerage. You could use it for pumping, and sanitizing water without chemicalizing it with chlorine and fluoride and all the other things. Just basically boil it. So it's probably the most efficient way. It has so many different other uses. I mean, look at if you think of the Navy, the reason why they want nuclear powered submarines is because those reactors on those subs keeps everybody on those boats alive. It produces their air, produces their food, produces their water. It handles their sanitation. Right? They would die without the reactor on board. That we could bring that same power not in a confined area like a U.S. Navy boat, but into every community across the country and make literally electricity free, or well, just about free.
Yeah,
Right?
except for the initial production of these things.
Right. And now right now they're very expensive because the regulations and the cost of production are so high. When we have all of their uranium mined already, there is no real nuclear waste. That's also a misnomer, by the way. That nuclear, there is no such thing as nuclear waste. They deem it as nuclear waste so that the powers to be could steal the asset, because when they originally wrote the laws allowing nuclear energy, that the ratepayers would actually own the fuel rods themselves. Okay? So by saying, well, these things are now they're no longer efficient. They've only lost 5% of their effectiveness in a reactor, so we're going to pull them out. And rather than taking them from a freshwater reactor and transferring them to a saltwater reactor, which would produce energy and reconstitute their source, they put them in pools and cooling pools and deem it as nuclear waste. And yes, by all means, if they spill, if they explode, yeah, it's pretty dangerous. Okay, but that doesn't have to be the case, and you don't have to keep mining the uranium. We have mined all the uranium we will ever need for the production of electricity.
Wow, that's a really profound statement, because you don't have any additional pollution over what's already been created in the last century. So, as Stoneton asks, what is your view on molten salt reactors? So I think you just covered that, right?
That's it. That will reconstitute the rods that come from the freshwater reactors.
St. Bernard, Fukushima. Let's see. I'm just going through a couple. I don't know. I don't see too many other questions worthy of our addressing there.
Okay.
Let's see. Hold on. I'm just trying to scan through here and see if anybody else had any good questions here to ask. I don't see anything. But so, and I do highly recommend that people go down in the show notes and discuss this. Again, the reason that I wanted to have you back today was that this is just a constant issue, and it seems like we could do a show on this every single day for a year and people still wouldn't get it, And
no, they've been brainwashed with the propaganda their whole lives, and they need to really understand. But they're not scientifically minded, and they look at it as I'm on an economic level. For somebody, let's say the government says to you, well, we want you to become greener, so we're going to give you a subsidy to put these solar panels on your roof, and that will cut your electric bill in half. Well, for the average person,
and double your taxes.
Because then they'll say, we added the value to your house, and there goes your property tax. They're going to take it from you one way or another, but people don't think that far in advance. So for the average person, they look at it and say, well, that's a pretty good thing. I'm not going to be polluting as much, But mind you, these are the same people that still go to McDonald's and roll their window down, throw their trash out the window, right? Or they're chewing gum and they spit it out on the sidewalk. So until we can nothing is going to solve our energy problem, political problems, socioeconomic problems, until we can get people to stop spitting their chewing gum out on the sidewalk. That's my personal opinion. It really comes down to everything you needed to know you learned in kindergarten. You just didn't listen to it. right? Clean up after your messes. Don't make a mess. Be good to your neighbors.
You know,
but you can't do that.
I was just thinking one more thing I want to mention about these, Toyota Prius. Now they have the plug-in hybrids because there was a company in Orange County that started converting them all into plug-ins. So then Toyota got wise to push them out of business and incorporated it. But so the whole idea with that, with the plug-in, is that you're going to take converted energy from petroleum that was produced into electricity, then pump it into your car that has to run on electricity that has a gas tank that can burn the fuel in the first stage. But I guess the benefit is that you spend the $2,000 or $3,000 up front when you buy the car rather than at the pump later on. Is that the benefit?
Yeah. And you subsidize the oil companies because they have to upgrade the grid to be able to handle the additional load of power so that you can plug your device in so you can feel better about yourself. So the system
so that you can feel good about the Birkenstocks and the tofu and the kale chips. Got it.
Exactly.
All right. So, Greg, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they get a hold of you?
Oh, they can email me at gregq1962@gmail. My website for my company, it's down because I'm actually doing some other things. I'm actually, believe it or not, working a lot within the solar industry.
You are working within the solar industry.
In a roundabout way. I'm working with some people, and we're working with some companies that really, and so we're kind of showing them the right way to go about it. Predominantly, where I think it has, I mentioned this earlier, where I think solar has its best use is in the, which is really the home-free lifestyle that so many people are finding appealing these days. So your tiny houses, the people that are deciding to live in, whether it's vans or live in motorhomes, all right. A lot of in our gig economy, which a lot of people have the opportunity to do that. It's a very fast-growing segment, and solar is a really important part of that. That's the realm that it really is required.
One last question. This is from Citadin again. Question to Greg: what does he think about suppressed technologies, both in energy generation and for ultra-efficient engines?
Well, I mentioned that before. A lot of innovation has been suppressed. When oil was $120 a barrel, there was massive innovations going on. The price collapsed before a lot of those innovations could come to market, which preserves the position of the oligarchy, the people that have established, because they have the means to ride out these waves, regardless of how long they take. Because they can go borrow money at uber low interest rates from the Federal Reserve, go to the New York Federal Reserve Bank and say, geez, we need to be able to cover our payroll for the next 6 months. Oh yeah, here's $1 billion. Go solve your problem. You're too big to fail. All right. But the innovators, the engineers, the guys that have, worked for years in the shadows, a lot of these are people that worked within the oil industry itself. The same thing in the automotive industry, people that have worked within the automotive industry themselves and said, geez, I can find a better way to do this. And then, the big boys always find a way to starve you out of business before you have a chance to bring your innovations to market. We don't live in a free enterprise system. We live in a capitalist system, okay? And I know you've had E. Michael Jones on your show, but he's absolutely right. Capitalism is legalized usury and sodomy. And it's set up and it's geared.
That's real said. Yeah. I had asked him actually to come on tonight, but I didn't hear back from him. So
that would have been great. He's very wise in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, the innovations are being stifled because there's no free flow or innovative capital. We have capitalism, which is a Trotskyite. For those people who understand what that is. I mean, if you're old enough to have lived through the Reagan Revolution and saw the election of people like Bill Clinton. I mean, I remember, when Bill Clinton was elected, saying to myself, how could this happen to this country? How could we go to the point where somebody like this, that the people of this country could elect a man like this? And then where I really started to come unwound with the whole process and realize that the whole system was just a farce was the Republican Revolution led by Newt Gingrich in '94. That the first time since World War II, the Republicans had a majority in the House and the Senate, and Bill Clinton was all on his own. He was basically a lame duck president. And yet, he got everything that he wanted to get done was done. You know, just, it was like, wait a minute, where this whole act, this whole charade of politics is just it's just a show. And that coordinated too with some of the experiences that I was going through when I was in investment banking in New York. And I realized, boy, the world doesn't work anything like we thought. And you know,
Indeed, it doesn't. I've pretty much dedicated 9 years of this show to exposing that, or at least the last 7 of it, you know.
Mm-hmm. And you'll never be able to, you're never going to get, it's just something you have to continually do. You still see younger people today buying into the same thing, still saying, well, the problem with our society is those Democrats or those Republicans, Donald Trump.
Left wing, right wing, same bird, you know, it's like, hello, it's a dialectic, it's you know.
Right. The problem with energy is the oil industry. So we need solar panels. What the solar panels are, the oil industry. Like when you explain to people, like, huh? Like, well, what is it about that a solar panel is going to produce so many BTUs of energy over its lifespan? Okay. A barrel of oil produces so many BTUs of energy as well. But if a barrel of oil will produce as many BTUs as one solar panel does over 20 years, which one is better? Solar panel or the liquid energy? The oil. The solar panel just represents a redundancy that's not necessary. And that's where everything in our society is built towards these redundancies that are meaningless except to empower certain small groups of people over the benefit of everybody else. And so that everybody can point to each other and say, if you don't support solar panels, you're against the environment. You're a meanie. You're a Republican. You're it's like, oh my God, you know, I just turned 55 years old, right? And a friend of mine gave me something. I posted it on my Facebook page. It's like, I can answer just about every question I am given these days with basically with 3 answers. F this, F that, F off. Okay? Because everything out there today is just so, you know, completely, it's not, in my mind now, it's just nothing is based on logic or reason at all. It's all based on emotion.
I have, that's very true, and that's why we're constantly pushing the Trivium to get people to actually think and look things up rather than just responding emotionally to everything. It's like, wow. Now, somebody named IOX has a question. Why does local war drive up prices when the global supply is unchanged?
Why do wars drive up prices?
Why does local war drive up prices?
Oh, opportunism more than anything.
Yeah, you know, it's like when I lived in Belgrade, the you know, in Yugoslavia and Serbia, the U.S. had bombed out all of their oil refineries and oil storage facilities. You know, so you saw guys all over the streets with 2-liter Coca-Cola bottles at double the price, you know, selling gasoline everywhere.
Right. That's how they do it in Nigeria. Oh, by the way, that you just reminded me of something we were talking about a little bit earlier when the person asked a question about China, made a comment about China. You know, that solar is king and oil is shit. You know, if oil was so bad for China, then China would not be investing in building the world's largest oil reserves. They are by far building underground oil storage capacity that is going to be 4 or 5 times what we have here in the U.S. And what's actually even supporting the price of oil today, keeping it from going to $20 a barrel, is the fact that every month they're bringing more storage online. because it's a constant process of building tanks and underground storage. It's almost an insatiable thing. They're like a chipmunks right now, the Chinese. They're trying to store up as much oil as they possibly can, for that day when whether it's the petrodollar or whatever it is, or the Silk Road or whatever it is that causes this event that changes the world as we know it and our reality comes crashing down around us, that they can say, well, we have enough liquid energy, and since we produce solar panels here, that there's enough to build on a local level, and they're also not afraid to explore the small modular nuclear reactors as well. It's one of the reasons why they're looking to get into nuclear submarines and aircraft carriers, just like we do, because there's a benefit to that outside of military applications. But it all comes down to this, the war profiteering and everything that's going on. It's the opportunism that goes on, the misinformation about the energy industry, its source, its relationship to us. It's pretty bad. I don't see it getting better.
Well, I hope the word gets out. Maybe this one will go, reach 100,000 people like our last interview did, and maybe more people will wake up to this entire scandal and start thinking more logically about this stuff. But Greg, I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much. And, thanks to everybody out in audience land for joining us tonight. Keep it up. People need to know about this. It's, it's a big issue. And every single day when I get stuck on the road behind a Toyota Prius, I think about this,
I appreciate you, Jan. You do great work. I love you.
You
all
too,
the
brother.
best to you and your family, and we'll talk again real soon.
Thanks again, sir. Have a good night, and take care, everyone. We'll see you next week. Tonight, Clint Richardson was sick. We were supposed to have him and Bill Jocelyn back on, but they should be on next week. As long as everything works out. See you all next week, everybody. Thanks, Greg. Till next time.
All right.
And bye-bye.